is no Nintendo CD. Understood?
Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Cyrus. Today we're talking about the next level of the Sega Genesis evolution, which was, of course, the Sega CD. Now, at the time, I was totally absorbed with the turbo graphics. So I was, the Sega CD came out here in America in October of 1992. And the TurboGrafx was rebranding at the same time and re-releasing the TurboGrafx CD as the Turbo Duo. And of course, I was all about that. I was obsessed with it. I ended up getting a Turbo Duo and I never looked back. So I never really gave Sega CD the full opportunity to win me over, really. Because I was just convinced the TurboGrafx was the better way to go. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. You might have a different opinion. I don't know. But I will say, I did eventually get a Sega CD. Now, I ended up getting the Model 2. What you're seeing right there on screen is the Model 1. A lot of people, I think, prefer the look of the Model 1. But I will say that over time, the Model 1 has just not held up as well. They kind of fall apart. If you've got one that's still good, that's still fully functional, fantastic. But that's harder to come by than the Model 2. There are other models as well. The Sega CD was released and re-released in different versions and in different regions. There was the Model 2, which is what I have. There was the CDX, which was a Genesis Sega CD all built in. There was the Wonder Mega. You might have heard of that. Pretty interesting combination unit there. The Laser Active system, which had modules and it could actually play Sega CD laser discs, and even there was modules for like the TurboGrafx and stuff like that. Here's a weird Sega CD that was actually like a boom box. So there's that too. Yeah, there was a lot of different ways you could play Sega CD, and there still are. There's a lot of new ways that you can play Sega CD. You can play it through emulators. There's a lot of great emulators out there. My favorite emulator that I've had for the Genesis and Sega CD for a long time has been Kega Fusion, or maybe they're just calling it Fusion these days. It's really good. Of course, there's the Sega Genesis Classic, the second one that was released, and it has Sega CD support. So there's all kinds of ways you can play. The Mega SG, which is an FPGA based system. There's the Mister, which is also FPGA. You might look into that if you want really, really accurate recreation of the hardware without having to own the original stuff. If you do have a Genesis and you really don't want to mess with the CD stuff, but you want to play the CD games, there's a couple of Everdrives that are out that actually will give you full Sega CD support in the cartridge itself, and you can just load your ISOs into the cartridge and play Sega CD games that way. There's links in the description for all of this stuff. If you're interested in it, you can look up these. I know these are expensive, but that's because they have full support for the Sega CD. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. Or you could just get a Sega CD like what I have. I have the Model 2. Sega CD is fascinating to me because, yes, this was released. Originally, the idea was to match the hardware that was in the PC Engine CD, but as they were developing it, they figured out some improvements that they could implement into the Sega CD to make it even better as far as the hardware goes than what was offered for the PC Engine CD-ROM. So they included an additional Motorola 68000, but instead of 7.6 megahertz, they beefed this sucker up to 12.5. So that's a pretty good upgrade right there. They also implemented hardware scaling and rotation, which they talk about a little bit here. And you can read about this on your own and get some better information. I'm just sort of going over it real quick. The Sega CD had a lot of its a lot of unique hardware built into it, which allowed for some really awesome capability for what was possible, you know, for the games for the Sega CD. It could really take things to a whole new level, as far as what's possible. You can see here, there's, I mean, all kinds of great information about what's possible with the polygons, what's possible with mode 7 type effects. There was enhancements to pretty much everything for the Genesis. So it's a huge upgrade. So on a hardware scale, this thing absolutely kicks the PC Engine CD-ROMs butt all over the place. Absolutely. That's true. It's hard to argue. The only real thing that they never really were able to beat the PC Engine CD at was the color palette. Now, there are ways that they can get more colors on the screen than the standard Sega Genesis color palette, but this thing actually still uses the Sega Genesis video processor for putting the graphics on the screen. So it's still bound to what the Genesis can do there. But like I said, there are some ways that with the programming tricks, you can get more colors on the screen, but you know, it is what it is. So the question is, what kind of games did you get on the Sega CD or the Mega CD, however you'd like to refer to it? Well, a lot of people remember the Sega CD as being pretty much full motion video games. And when they initially launched the Sega CD in North America, absolutely, the focus was FMV. That was the focus. They were promoting it. There was the ads that were out. It was all about these full motion games. You know, Night Trap, Sewer Shark, Marky Mark, Make Your Own Video, Crisscross will make you jump. And that was pretty much the focus, because you got to remember, back in those days, at that specific time, there was this general thinking that the future of video games was full motion video. The CDI had was in the works. The CDI was totally devoted to full motion video. There was the 3DO was in the works, and they were really pushing what they thought was going to be the trend, which was, of course, full motion video. The successor to the PC Engine, not the Super Graphics, but the one that would actually be the successor to the PC Engine, was actually all built around the idea of full motion video as being the cornerstone for what the games were going to be. And the PCFX did not take off at all, because that was not what people wanted. And we didn't know that. The industry didn't know that until things really started going with the Sega CD. So that first round of games for the Sega CD, yes, very much focused on full motion video. And what started off as a small window on the screen, later on, as they progressed, some of the later full motion video games, they were able to get full screen, full motion video. But people really weren't that into that kind of game. It was a neat novelty. And there are some games that utilize that better than others. Some games actually make that full motion video look like it's more than what it is. And that's pretty cool stuff. We'll look at a couple of those. But the Sega CD had capabilities far beyond that. It actually could do, like we said a second ago, polygons, and it could do some really interesting mode 7 scaling and rotation type of effects, that hardware scaling and rotation. So what the Sega CD could do, and this is all models, the Model 1, Model 2, whatever. What the Sega CD could do was really on another level for the Sega Genesis. How well was that implemented? How many games really took advantage of this extra horsepower and these extra features? Well, there might be more than you think, because you may have only really heard about these FMV games, but there's some better stuff out there, I think, and there's some stuff that you really should check out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at some of these really awesome games for the Sega CD, some of which you may have never heard of. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's jump in. It is 2 players, you can see. We're just going to be doing a single player here. Here we go. This game is gonna seem familiar if you've ever played like Afterburner. It's that same type of super scalar type shooter game. Really is just a really beautiful game, and like I said, it definitely takes advantage of the Sega CD hardware for the scaling, rotation, and of course the full screen, full motion video. Really awesome stuff.
The primary objective is to activate one of these and walk to another sector in the Sol Star system. The mission has 3 phases. Phase 1. Destroy the primary computer located.
It makes you wonder why there was never a Space Harrier released for the Sega CD, because Space Harrier would have been great on this hardware.
The orb surrounding the opposing power pylons. Phase 3. Engage the activated warp gate by landing on the adjacent circular launch platform.
Here's a cool section that's like, you're not just like flying forward, you actually have like some freedom of how you can move around. Okay, next up we're going to take a look at Batman and Robin, The Adventures of Batman and Robin on Sega CD. This is another game that I think takes good advantage of the hardware that's built into the Sega CD. It's obviously a late release game. This came out in '95 here in America, but it's pretty awesome. And with the passing of the late, great Kevin Conroy, I think it's definitely a game I wanted to include in this list. If you've never played it, you should definitely check it out. It's got these really cool full screen cutscenes from the animated series, and the game itself is actually pretty awesome too. So let's play a little bit of Batman and Robin. That took some doing.
Make it easy on yourselves, ladies. Where's your pretty boss?
Flattery will get you nowhere, Batman. Except to an early grave.
Yeah, this is just ridiculously awesome. So let's check out something else. And this is Night Striker. It's another one of these games that's sort of a super scalar game. This one will probably remind you of Thunderblade, if you ever played Thunderblade. This is, I think this is from an arcade game. This is a port of an arcade game. But anyway, just really cool looking. More use of the built-in hardware scaling and rotation for the Sega CD.
Standby ready? Good luck. Targets approaching. Destroyed. Destroyed.
I think it's pretty cool. Okay, now this is a first-person shooter for the Sega CD. It's called Bloodshot. And you can set up different things here. Nothing too major there. Let's check out the game. Battle Cores. Yeah, this is a mech game. Do you like the mechs, you know, where you get in the giant robots and fight and stuff like that? Well, this one's pretty good. There's not very many of these types of games that look like this on 16-bit platforms. It's not really until you get to the Jaguar and the 32X that you really start seeing more of this stuff. But this one's pretty cool. All right, here we go. Pretty cool way they do their radar on the bottom part of the screen. I don't know if you can see that. A lot of games that do sort of a 3D environment have a hard time figuring out how to do a 3D radar. It's pretty cool. You know, absolutely one of the strengths of the Sega CD is its full motion video. It's a little bit more capable than the TurboGrafx CD as far as handling that sort of thing. It just is. And that's because there's just a little bit more RAM in the Sega CD. The hardware is just designed a little bit better around that idea. So there's a lot of full motion video in different games and things like that. And some of these games, like this one, AX101, will take advantage of that full motion video and use it for gameplay and not just as some nice little cutscenes or things like that. So for on-rail shooters, which is what this is, and there's a couple of these on the Sega CD, you really get a nice experience if they blend your action with full motion in the background and stuff like that. I can remember when the Sega CD came out, and I walked into a KB Toys in Brownwood, Texas, at the mall in Brownwood, Texas, and I saw this game on a TV running off of a tape, like a demo tape that they had sitting on the very top shelf at the register. And I can remember looking at this game, and of course at the time I already had a Turbo Duo, and I was, like I said, really big into TurboGrafx at the time. But I can remember seeing this game running and just, you ever feel like you're on the wrong team for a second? I can remember questioning my decisions at that moment. Of course, I was still very happy with what I had, and I obviously continue to love the TurboGrafx to this day. But this was a game that I saw running, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And sometimes you just have to acknowledge something that looks great when it looks great. And Sylphid is a game that blended the full motion capability of the Sega CD with the polygonal generation capability of the Sega CD to do some amazing stuff. And this is the type of game that I love. I absolutely love these kinds of games. So, yeah, this is always what I have considered one of the jewels in the crown of the Sega CD. If you wanted to say, like, this is a hidden gem, I don't think it's that hidden. I think it's pretty much out in the front. Sylphid is amazing. Sylphid is just a beautiful looking game. So let's play a little bit of this. You'll see what I'm talking about. I don't think it's difficult to see why I fell in love with this. And when I got a Sega CD finally, this was definitely one of the first stops on the Sega CD train I had to make. And it is great.
Missiles coming in fast. Intercept systems to emergency code. Quick! Defense fleet destroyed. Still 8 in action.
Snatcher is a game that is really famous for bringing that cyberpunk theme to consoles. And in Japan, it was super popular on the PC Engine CD-ROM. And the game was ported to the Sega CD and brought to the United States. And if you play this game on the Sega CD, you can, it's sort of like a murder mystery kind of thing, but you can actually use the light gun for several different segments in the game as well. So yeah, this is a really cool game, and it's a very unique experience on the Sega CD and in general. So yeah, I think pretty much everybody that plays Sega CD or is familiar with it will tell you you really should check out Snatcher.
June 6, 1996. A mysterious explosion destroys the Chernobyl research facility near Moscow. Lucifer Alpha, a powerful biological weapon under secret development there, is released into the atmosphere, creating a deadly biohazard. Carried by the trade winds, Lucifer Alpha spreads throughout Eastern Europe and Eurasia, destroying 80% of the populace. Half of the world's people die. The greatest biohazard in history later becomes known simply as the catastrophe. But at this time, who could have possibly imagined that the ultimate biohazard wouldn't occur for another half-century? 50 years later, mankind faces its greatest crisis, the appearance of a mysterious android life form. Its purpose and origin are unknown. Is it a new form of weapon? Or perhaps an invasion from some other world? They appear during winter, killing humans and infiltrating society by taking the place of their victims. Employing an artificial skin, they can sweat and even bleed. Part organic, part machine, they're almost impossible to distinguish from those they kill. As they steal their victims' bodies in order to take their place, these mysterious invaders become known as Snatchers.
Sega CD is home to some of the best Genesis games that got sort of remade on the console with CD soundtracks and things like that. Shining Force CD is an example of that. Echo the Dolphin 1 and 2 both got really awesome CD soundtracks. There's a great version of Eternal Champions, Earthworm Jim. There's a bunch of really great Sega Genesis games that just got better music and some enhancements when they got put on the Sega CD. There's also some classic Genesis arcade ports like Golden Axe, and then there's like Streets of Rage and Revenge of Shinobi that are on a disc that came with the Sega CD. And though the version that's on that disc is actually enhanced because the sound effects are actually different. If you play like Streets of Rage or something on that from that disc, it's different than if you play the cartridge version. It's pretty interesting to see the differences. There's also a lot of light gun games. If you have the Konami Enforcer light gun, like I just mentioned, Snatcher does support the light gun for certain scenes, but Lethal Enforcers 1 and 2 have Sega CD versions that are considerably enhanced that use the guns. There's Mad Dog McCree 1 and 2. There's actually several really good light games that you can play on this system. And there's some good compilation CDs that were released as well. Like if you're a fan of the Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike trilogy, there is a CD that's the Super Strike trilogy that has enhanced versions of those. If you happen to like a game called Heavy Nova, which most people don't, it's a robot fighting game. Me and my brother love that game. It's a game he got for Genesis back in the day. There's an enhanced version of that, and there's actually an enhanced version of its sequel on this system as well. Lords of Thunder, the awesome shooter, pretty much my favorite shooter on the TurboGrafx, does have a Sega CD version. I don't think it's quite as good, but it's still amazing. And it does have a few things that even the TurboGrafx version doesn't. And if you like RPGs, I did mention Shining Force, but there's a couple of bangers you really need to check out. As a big fan of the TurboGrafx 16, Working Designs is a company that I know pretty well, and it was a real pleasure to see Working Designs releasing games for the Sega CD, RPGs, and Lunar is a great series.
To Dragon Master Dyne, but this is ridiculous. If Dyne were still alive today, I'm sure he'd tell you to stop dreaming about his exciting quest, get off your butt, and set out on your own fantastic adventures. I know you have the courage to be a great hero, just like Dyne. So what's holding you back?
If Lunar the Silver Star doesn't do it for you, then try Lunar Eternal Blue, another fantastic RPG on the Sega CD.
Ruby, listen. Come on, Ruby, let's get out of here! Well, looks like you've caught us in another messy situation. Oh, by the way, if you haven't figured it out, my name is Hero. And the flying cat is named Ruby. She said she's actually a baby red dragon, but I don't know if I quite believe her. She doesn't care though. We've been friends for what seems like forever.
What's that noise? Wow, Hero! Get a load of that! It's incredible! But what the heck is it? It looks like a ship, but it moves without wind or sails.
Hey, you! Yes! You over there! What are you doing in this area?
Who does this joker think he is? We might ask you the same thing, mister!
I wasn't talking to your cat! I was talking to you, boy!
Hello? Time for your eye exam! I am not a cat!
Knock it off, Ruby. You're gonna get us in trouble. My name is Hero, and this is Ruby. Identify yourself.
Certainly. I am White Knight Leo, leader of Althena's Guard, and this is the dragon ship Destiny. Now then, listen up. You kids need to evacuate this area. A confrontation is about to take place. I don't want to see any civilians accidentally caught in the middle of this thing. Return to your home immediately. Move it!
The list of amazing games on the Sega CD is perhaps not as lengthy as the PC Engine or something like the Sega Saturn, but there are some absolute bangers on this console that people will tell you that you need to play. Of course, Terminator is one of those. Just an amazing soundtrack and a really fun experience to have on this console. Sega CD has so many games on it that are just iconic, and some people would say like Sonic CD is the best version of Sonic. Not everybody's going to agree with that, but it definitely does things that were just not possible on the cartridge Sonic the Hedgehog games. With the blending of the Mode 7 effects, with the awesome CD soundtrack, and with the anime style cutscenes that they are able to include, Sonic CD really does give you something special. And I think it's a great example of how Sega with this console is able to blend so many of these elements together to really create something unique and powerful. So is the Sega CD just a full motion video console? No, it's a lot more than that. And I think sometimes when we think about the system, we kind of remember it with that lens. We kind of think of it as just this FMV system. There's plenty of those games. You can look those up, you can play those. I'm sure I'll do videos about them. There's some really good ones. Sewer Shark is actually a really good one. Everybody's played Night Trap, and this is where that got started. But there's so many other awesome experiences that this hardware makes possible. So I think that the Sega CD is definitely a powerful console. It's worth playing. It's worth emulating, even if you're not going to get the original stuff. It's worth trying, and it's worth your time. Thanks so much for watching. I'll have more videos coming soon. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your thoughts. I really appreciate everybody that's been hanging around, that's been a part of this channel, that's been helping me create content and come up with ideas for things. You guys have been great. I have been reading your comments and just loving everything that you guys are saying. And I need your help, so please stick around. More to come. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.